Imagine a world where the mountains have lost their voice. For most of the 20th century, the vast, rugged wilderness of Montana was a landscape defined by an eerie, unnatural quiet. The peaks were there, the rivers were there, and the forests looked healthy from a distance, but something essential was missing. By the mid-1900s, the gray wolf had been effectively erased from the lower 48 states, leaving behind a massive hole in the biological machinery of the Great Northern Rockies. But then, a group of bold visionaries and biologists decided to play the ultimate game of high-stakes ecological chess. They didn't just bring back a few scattered families. They initiated a process that eventually saw the expansion of thousands of wolves back into what were once empty forests. They wanted to witness the return of a legend, but they never expected that the wolves would do more than just hunt. Over the span of 40 years, these predators have physically reshaped the geology of state rivers, redirected the very gravity of the ecosystem, and even altered the genetic future of Montana's wildlife. What returned 4 decades later wasn't just a pack of animals, it was a biological force that transformed the state into something unbelievable. Today we are diving deep into the massive Montana wolf reemergence, to see how 5,000 wolves rewrote the laws of nature, and why the results are leaving scientists in a state of absolute shock. To truly understand how incredible this transformation was, you have to look at what happens to a forest when the check and balance system is removed. For decades, without wolves to keep them moving, the elk and deer populations in Montana became what scientists call stationary browsers. They didn't have to worry about being hunted from the shadows, so they parked themselves in the lush river valleys and ate everything in sight. They ate every willow sapling, every young aspen, and every bit of cottonwood. This caused a massive collapse of the valley ecosystems. The birds left because there were no trees for nesting, the beavers left because there was no wood for dams, and the riverbanks started eroding because there were no roots to hold the soil together. The mountains were literally falling apart because they were too safe. Then came the return of the wolves. When the first packs were reintroduced and began to multiply toward that 5,000 mark over the following decades, a phenomenon known as trophic cascade hit the state with the force of a freight train. Within just a few years of the wolves' return, the behavior of the elk changed overnight. They could no longer afford to sit in the valleys and graze aimlessly. They had to move to the higher, steeper ground where they could see the predators coming. This simple change in fear geography was the spark that reignited the entire state. Suddenly, the willow and aspen trees in the valleys began to shoot up. They weren't being eaten to the ground anymore. Within 10 years, some of those trees had grown 5 times their height, and that's when the birds came back. Songbirds, migratory birds, and scavengers returned in droves to the new forests springing up along the water. But the most insane part? The rivers actually changed their physical shape. Because the trees were now growing thick and strong along the banks, the roots stabilized the earth. The constant erosion stopped. The rivers became narrower, deeper, and developed more pools and riffles. The return of the wolves actually fixed the plumbing of the Montana wilderness. They were the architects of the water itself. But there is a deeper, more mysterious layer to this story that involves the genetic shielding of the elk and deer populations. For years, without wolves, the herbivore herds were becoming genetically soft. Because there was no pressure from a predator, individuals with genetic weaknesses or poor immune systems were surviving and breeding. This was leading to a long-term decline in the overall health of the Montana herds. When the wolves returned, they acted as a biological filter. They didn't just hunt at random. They focused on the sick, the weak, and those with underlying health issues. Decades later, the elk herds of Montana are some of the strongest and most resilient in the country. By removing the weak links, the wolves have actually saved the elk from a slow metabolic decline. The DNA of the Montana wild is now more refined than it has been in over a century. Let's talk about the apex synergy that developed among the predators. When scientists released the wolves, people were worried it would hurt the grizzly bear and mountain lion populations. But the unbelievable result was the exact opposite. Wolves are messy providers. When a wolf pack finishes a meal, they leave behind a massive amount of high-quality protein for other species. This created a nutrient buffet that supported an explosion in grizzly bear numbers. The bears, being opportunistic scavengers, would follow the wolves and utilize the remains of their hunts. This allowed the bears to go into hibernation with higher body fat percentages, leading to more successful cub births. The wolves weren't just taking life, they were feeding the entire mountain. They acted as a distribution system for energy across the high country. The scale of the 5,000 wolf milestone is something that is hard to visualize until you see the maps. These wolves have now expanded into every corner of the state, from the dense cedar forests of the west to the rugged island ranges of the Central Plains. This expansion has led to the discovery of high-intelligence pack behavior. In Montana, wolves have been observed using sophisticated ambush topography. They aren't just running after their prey. They are utilizing the curves of the mountains and the directions of the wind to herd animals into specific kill zones that they have mapped out over generations. This cultural knowledge is being passed down from alpha pairs to their pups. We are witnessing the development of a complex, non-human culture that is thousands of years old, being reborn in the 21st century. Now let's look at the beaver connection, which is one of the most unbelievable side effects of the wolf return. As the wolves pushed the elk out of the valleys and the trees grew back, the beavers returned to take advantage of the wood. Beaver dams are nature's water storage systems. These dams raised the water table, creating new wetlands that filtered the water and provided habitat for hundreds of species of insects, amphibians, and fish. The wolves essentially hired the beavers to repair the landscape. By just being there and being scary, the wolves triggered a chain reaction that resulted in thousands of new ponds across the state. In a time of increasing drought, these wolf-created wetlands have become the ultimate insurance policy for Montana's environment. The DNA enthusiasts in the audience are going to find this next part fascinating. Scientists have been tracking the genetic flow of these wolves as they moved from the original reintroduction sites. What they found is that Montana has become a hybrid hub for wolf genetics. Wolves from the Canadian North have moved down to mingle with the original reintroduction lines, creating a superpopulation with incredible genetic diversity. This diversity has given the Montana wolves a massive advantage in fighting off diseases that often wipe out smaller, more isolated animal groups. They are building a biological fortress in the Rockies, creating a genetic reservoir that could eventually repopulate the entire American West. But it wasn't all a smooth ride. One of the most unbelievable challenges was the communication conflict. As the wolf population hit that 5,000 mark, they began to enter areas where they came into contact with human territory. This led to the development of biofencing technologies. Instead of using traditional means to manage the wolves, scientists started using the wolves' own communication against them. By playing recordings of territorial howls from imaginary rival packs, researchers were able to steer the wolves away from sensitive areas without ever touching them. This is the new frontier of conservation, using the animal's own psychology and language to manage the landscape. It's a conversation between two species that is finally being understood after centuries of misunderstanding. The return of the wolves also triggered the coyote collapse, which had an unbelievable effect on the smaller animals of Montana. For 70 years, without wolves, the coyote population had exploded. Coyotes are efficient hunters of small mammals like foxes, badgers, and ground-nesting birds. When the wolves returned, they viewed the coyotes as competitors and significantly reduced their numbers in certain zones. This mesopredator release meant that the red fox, the badger, and the raptor populations surged. Suddenly, the middle management of the forest was back in balance. The return of the wolves was like a corporate restructuring for the entire ecosystem. Everyone had to find their rightful place again, and the result was a much more diverse and bustling marketplace of life. One of the most emotional and unbelievable sights researchers documented was the gravesite scavenging. In the high winters of Montana, food is scarce for almost everyone. However, the presence of the wolves meant that even in the deepest snow, a source of food was always being provided for the birds of prey. In areas with wolf packs, the winter survival rate for golden eagles and bald eagles increased significantly. The wolves aren't just predators. They are winter lifelines for the kings of the sky. This vertical connection, from the wolves on the ground to the eagles in the air, is a reminder that every part of the wilderness is connected by 1,000 invisible threads. As the 40-year mark approached, scientists began to look at the soil carbon sequestration levels in Montana. This is where it gets really unbelievable. Because the wolves helped restore the forests and the grasslands by managing the grazers, the land began to breathe differently. The massive new growth of trees and healthy grasses began to pull significantly more carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the soil. The return of the wolves has actually helped cool the microclimates of the Montana valleys. They are literally fighting the warming of the planet just by stalking the elk. A wolf pack in the woods is worth more to the climate than 1,000 solar panels in some of these delicate mountain regions. Then there is the wolf-human social evolution. Over the last 4 decades, The people of Montana have had to undergo a massive psychological shift. We went from a culture that viewed the wolf as a monster to a culture that is learning to respect them as a necessary neighbor. This hasn't been easy, and there are still many conflicts. But the social adaptation of the human population is just as unbelievable as the biological adaptation of the wolves. We are learning how to be cohabitants of the mountains again. It's a return to an older, more respectful way of living with the land, one that acknowledges that a healthy wilderness needs its sharp edges. The research teams also discovered something they call the chorus effect. They found that the presence of wolves actually impacts the stress hormones of the entire forest. When a pack is in the area, the other animals are more atypical in their movement, which leads to better distribution of nutrients through their waste. The forest enters a state of high alert health. It's like a gym where everyone is working out harder because the trainer is watching. The wolves are the trainers of the Montana wild. They keep everyone moving, everyone thinking, and everyone evolving. Without them, the forest becomes lazy and unhealthy. What came back after 40 years wasn't just the gray wolf. It was the spirit of the wild. The Montana mountains now feel complete. When you hear a howl echoing off a granite cliff at 3 in the morning, you aren't just hearing an animal. You are hearing the sound of a functioning planet. You are hearing the sound of the rivers being held in place by tree roots. You are hearing the sound of the eagles surviving the winter. You are hearing the sound of the carbon being pulled into the earth. The unbelievable reality of the Montana Project is that we didn't just save an animal. We saved a world. The population of 5,000 is now a durable legacy. These wolves have survived legal battles, political shifts, and environmental changes. They have proven that they are here to stay. And as they continue to refine the landscape, we are still finding new ways they are helping the earth. Just recently, researchers found that wolves might even be helping to slow the spread of chronic wasting disease in deer and elk by identifying and removing the infected individuals long before humans can tell they are sick. They are the sanitation department of the Rockies, keeping the herds healthy in a way that modern medicine can't match. The story of the Montana wolf is a story of biological redemption. It shows that no matter how much we have damaged a landscape, the blueprints for healing are still there, hidden in the instincts of the ancient predators. All we had to do was open the door and let them back in. What returned was a version of Montana that is more vibrant, more complex, and more alive than anyone living today can remember. It is a living masterpiece of nature's ability to bounce back from the brink. As the wolves move forward into their 5th decade in Montana, the eyes of the world are watching. This project has become the blueprint for rewilding projects across Europe and Asia. When people ask if it's possible to bring back the ghost species of the past, we point to the mountain peaks of Big Sky Country. We show them the narrower rivers, the taller trees, and the stronger elk. We show them a landscape that has regained its voice. The 5,000 aren't just a number on a spreadsheet. They are the heartbeats of the mountains. The unbelievable part of this journey is that we are still just scratching the surface of what the wolves are doing. Every year, we find a new connection, a new cascade, or a new genetic insight that they have provided. They are the teachers, and we are the students. They have taught us that a forest is not just a collection of trees, but a web of relationships. And they have taught us that sometimes, the best thing we can do for nature is to give it back its most fearful and beautiful residents. So, when you think of Montana, don't just think of the big sky or the open range. Think of the 5,000 hidden architects moving through the timber. Think of the biological revolution that they started 40 years ago and that they are continuing every single night. The empty forests are gone, and in their place is a wilderness that is finally whole. The return of the wolf is the greatest environmental success story of our time, and the insane results are a testament to the fact that when we heal nature, we heal ourselves. The chorus is back, the sanitation team is on duty, and the mountains of Montana are finally singing again. Thank you for walking through this incredible transformation with us. The world is a much wilder, much better place with the wolf at the door, and we are just lucky enough to be here to see the unbelievable things they do next. Keep listening to the wind. The story is still being told, one howl at a time.